Thank you so much for your patience. There's a horrendous rainstorm, and so everyone got stuck in a little bit of traffic, but is very excited to be here. Thank you so much for staying. It is my great pleasure to introduce director Yorgos Lanthimos and stars Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone. I wanted to start with you, Yorgos, because I know that you first met about this script in 2009, but then it was several years later that you started working with Tony on co-writing and rewriting that script. So I was really curious how much the story ebbed and flowed and changed from that initial conversation.
A lot. Yeah, it was a very long process. So it took years. We weren't working for. It took like 8-9 years, but we weren't working continuously for 9 years. But there was the initial story that I was very interested in it. Those three women. We were trying for a long time to create this, complex characters that you wouldn't be able to just read by a glance. So it took us a while in order to get there. We did our research, then we threw away a lot of stuff, we kept other stuff, we invented our own things. So in order to find the balance between everything, it just took a long time to get there.
And for you, Rachel, obviously having worked with Yorgos before, were some of the conversations that you had about coming on board this project different to what you talked about when you met for The Lobster?
I would say what was similar was that we had no conversations about what the process or what the journey would be, which is Yorgos's preferred method of working, which I very much enjoyed and appreciated. So he doesn't at all analyze or discuss or ruminate about what it. I mean, afterwards now we're talking about it, but prior to making it, there was no discussion. So I was just very excited about Lobster. It's a really different kind of world, and very excited about this world and working with Yorgos again.
And does that transcend onto set as well for both of you when you're figuring out your performance in a scene?
The notion of not discussing things. Yeah, there is absolutely zero discussion about anything that you're doing. I mean, we chat and joke and think, but there's no actual talking about what we're about to do or what we've just done, which is a really interesting way of working because you're just very unconscious. I think that's what Yorgos gets from actors, is something that you're not in charge of technically or in any way.
So if you're not talking altogether about characters and story in the rehearsal process, what did you do for those 3 weeks?
You mean rehearsals?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, well, we jumped around and we acted like human noodles, and we walked backwards without looking at each other, trying to sense where the people were behind us, and then they asked us to speed up, and then we moved faster backwards and tried not to crack our heads open. And we rehearsed all of the lines, but not in the way that they would happen on the day of shooting, and we read other people's characters, and then we clapped.
Didn't you have to pretend to give birth as well while reading some of your lines?
No. That was just my audition. But I think I understand that because I had to do my accent for my audition, and I think he just wanted to make sure I wasn't just memorizing the cadence. Yeah. Right? Is that right? You'll never say.
but actually, as fun and ridiculous and absurd and everything you said is we did ridiculous things together for 2 weeks. It was the court of Queen Anne, so it was
3 weeks.
Was it 3 weeks?
It was 3 weeks.
It felt like 2, Yorgos.
It felt like 6 to me.
So it was the Queen, Abigail, my character, Nicholas Holt's character, Joel. It was the inner court. So we all spent what turns out to be 3 weeks together.
Horse riding lessons included, though.
Oh, that's true.
And shooting lessons.
Oh, yeah,
and choreography.
And costume fitting.
So mainly 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks of
it was
game.
3 weeks.
We're very clear. It was 3 weeks. So Yorgos, how do you work on constructing these different things that you want your actors to do during that time, and what does that tell you about the performance that you're going to get on camera?
Not in front of them. We'll
talk
discuss it later. Well, it doesn't necessarily tell me what to expect. It's just a process that we all enter, and it works for many different things for me. It works for them learning the lines in a way that is not self-conscious, and it's not literal, and it's not, it doesn't stick in them in a certain way, and they don't think about it, so they learn the lines that way. They feel comfortable with each other because we spend a lot of time fooling around, making a fool of ourselves. Well, not me really. I just laugh. No, I enjoy it as well. I mean, it's the most pleasurable part of the process for me. We do laugh a lot, all of us, and so having fun that way, I think they feel much more comfortable later on when they're on set and they know each other and they have done, ridiculous things, and they're able to be, to try things without being, ashamed of something, or that they're gonna be. Yeah, you.
No, but it's really
elaborate.
because I've worked with people, like multiple times, and that feels really good because you've known the people before. But I've never felt this way after 3 weeks with 6 actors together. How much trust. It felt like we had been working together forever. Like I felt like I knew everybody so well and really comfortable around everyone. So that was, in 3 weeks, it was like a super course into becoming, not self-conscious in any way around each other.
I
So
think we were
definitely
taken
did
to the
work.
edge, the very edge, and then maybe pushed over the edge into the most ridiculous things that you could possibly do
in a
and be.
silly, not a scary way.
Yeah.
In a silly way.
Yeah, totally silly, like foolish, ridiculous, absurd, so that when we were on set, there would be nothing. I mean, nothing could ever be as ridiculous again. Well, maybe the Dark Race. I don't know.
I actually wanted to ask you about the comedy, because the comedy literally transcends into the credits. I don't know if you guys caught this, but some of the credits include Fastest Duck in the City, obviously the great Horatio, Nude Pomegranate Tory, and Wanking Man. So did you come into this film with a very clear idea of the comedy that you wanted to elicit for the audience?
Kind of. I mean, you never know exactly how the film is going to turn out, which is a good thing, I think. I welcome accidents and chance and various things that we discover along the way. But yes, and one of the reasons that it took so long to write the script, it was precisely to find the right writer to work with and find the right tone for it, and then work on the physicality of it and the physicality of the comedy, and with the appropriate choreographer. So the way that they moved, they sat, they walked, they danced was very particular, and there was a physical language created overall. So all of these elements, I think, played an important part. And then, of course, the performances and how sound is used, or how music is used, or how it's filmed. I think every element kind of contributed in a way so that we achieved a specific tone, which wasn't entirely clear from the beginning, but yeah, I had an idea.
One of the things I love the most about all of your movies is that amazing intonation and cadence that you have in the speech. And I was curious how that first came about and how that's kind of played as a continuing thread for you through your films, and then for both of you as performers, kind of how that you feel like that adds to your characters in the story.
I think it's because I speak to them with my Greek accent and they just get tuned in. No, I don't know. I mean, I never ask of the actors to do anything specific around that. I think it's just the.
I was just about to say, did you hear that tone in this? Because
it's like more subdued, but it still feels like it's there a little bit more at the beginning. And
No, but
I think it's maybe to do with the grammar, like the way the script is written
I
and the
think
wording.
what I do is, like, I try to get the script very tonally specific, and then it kind of sounds right when they do it, and they get it. It just comes out, you know, naturally how a specific specific dialogue should sound. But we're not, you know, analyzing how it should sound or what they should do about it.
That's great. And because you were mentioning the physicality, it's such a physical film in so many different ways, from the dance scene where you're wearing incredibly heavy costumes to the horse riding but falling off of it. And I wonder if the two of you could talk about some of the challenges of that as performers.
The dance, you mentioned the dance scene.
Yeah.
Because
It looks like you're carrying about 50 pounds of costume.
Yes, it was definitely more challenging once I wasn't wearing jeans in the rehearsal room. Just the height of the headdress, the corset, the length of the train, some of the moves that Constanza, who's a choreographer, Argentinian choreographer of a avant-garde theatre company in Berlin, avant-garde dance company, she came and cooked up the gestures with Yorgos, and we'd show it to him and he'd say, I'd like that one but not that one and that one. So it was always being shaped, and then right at the last minute the costume prohibited some of the moves from happening anyways. It was always a work in progress. It was really exhilarating. I've never danced in front of a camera, I guess. It was exhilarating and challenging, and a lot. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And what about for you, Emma, as well? I feel like you have a lot of falls and are shoved in a lot of places in mud.
Yes. There was a lot of physicality, and I did great with it. I never complained, and I always was excited. And I didn't even have a stunt double for any points of it. Like when I rolled backwards down a 2-story hill. That was just me. No, it was kind of a daily basis of how is Abigail going to be hurt today? I was not very, very hurt in real life, but it was interesting. It was always falling in mud, being slapped, slapping someone, getting tackled, you know, hitting myself in the face with a book. But again, it's movie magic, so wasn't that bad. But you didn't know that because I complained about it. Anyway.
The costumes are also so fantastic. The wonderful Sandy Powell, obviously, constructing those. And I like the mix of materials, and that you start with worn-out denim, and it's mixing old materials with new materials the way that the whole film does. Does that really help you get into the character and transport the journey that your character's having on screen when you're shooting out of sequence, especially?
No. No, not for me. What I mean, the color of the costume. I mean, I when I see the film, it's amazing because Sandy put all the women in just black and white. So it's kind of like a chessboard with like chess pieces battling it out, which is stylized and heightened and non-literal, I guess. But it doesn't affect. I mean, wearing corsets affects how you stand and walk. But yeah, it's all happening on the inside. I don't know what's the costume. I'm running out of steam here, Emma. What do you say?
The corset affected me deeply.
Okay. Yep.
But that was because I had never worn a corset before, and so knowing what it was like to be in that time period and the way you stand, the way you have to move, how proper it makes your stance and your speech on a daily basis was really astounding. I mean, it's incredibly painful, and that was the reality. So. Yeah, no, I found that affecting just because it was my first experience in that kind of wardrobe.
And how
it's
did
hard to breathe, essentially.
So how do you push through that when you literally can barely breathe and you're trying to deliver this amazing performance?
That's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, I just have to give an amazing performance.
Just keep saying it.
And that's how we did it. That's what we always told ourselves, right, Rachel?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Sorry. I mean, luckily, I would say that the script that we were given as actors was so miraculously brilliant that it just, distracted me from how my corset. We're telling such an incredible story that when your imagination kicks in, it's like it trumps your breath.
And it does. And again, at least for me, it did in some ways help. It helped add to any of that because it it feels like a completely different time.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because corsets, like we think of them now as, you know, women being like hemmed in and, constrained, and like it's like Coco Chanel threw it away. It's like not a feminist thing, right? The corset. Maybe Madonna made it. I don't know. But you know, these women are very power hungry, or hungry for cake if you're the queen, I guess. But you know, it's interesting to be like so tightly hemmed in, but they're not. They're pretty powerful dames.
They're running the country.
They're running the country, exactly.
And Yorgos, could you talk a little bit about your style directing with, you know, I think a lot of people have tapped into the fact you used a lot of wide angle lenses. You're also shooting your cast from down underneath a lot, which was really interesting and something that we don't see so much in cinema.
They didn't complain about that either. Yeah, you did a little bit, yeah.
No, I didn't. That was because of my nose
After
hair.
the fact.
That was because of my nose hair. But I fixed it.
Well, I mean, those kind of things come about in various ways. I mean, I have a personal preference for certain things, and I a certain taste, and I think in the last few films I've been going towards a certain direction of how I like.
Do you use a storyboard? Because I've never saw one. Do you know before you start the day? That's what it felt like. You were just, it was happening organically.
Yeah, no, I mean, we do go through the whole script with the DP, and we discuss the ideas of how we think it's going to be, but then we never do that. Right. But it's but it's very useful because you create a kind of language and a common vocabulary when you work together. And then on the day, because we like to work in real locations and with natural light, so you have to be there. And for me, the most important is how the scene plays out and the actors and how it translates while you're filming it. So there's no point in having designed this very specific shot that it doesn't work for the scene when you actually go there and try and do it. So what we do is rehearse on set with the actors and figure it out on the spot. But before that, because we have discussed it and had already ideas about how we're going to do it, we do have a vocabulary that we can use, and it's made up of many rules of the things that we don't like and of the things that we're not going to do in this film. So that's how it works, I think.
Was there a nice intimacy as well, the fact that you shot at Hatfield House and you were just in this one location that kind of offered you everything you needed for the film?
Yeah, almost everything. We combined a couple of other locations as well. But yeah, it's amazing. The first time you enter those spaces is very impressive, and then you get used to it, and you go like, oh, I wish it was a little bit bigger. I mean, we're.
And Queen Elizabeth I had lived there when she was a little girl, so it's just full of ghosts and history.
Were there any things that you wanted to do visually on screen that you were limited by because it is a historical landmark site?
There were a lot of limitations, yes, because you have to be very careful. I mean, and because we were working with natural light, and obviously there was no electricity, so candlelight for the night scenes. There were specifications about how many candles you can light in one room, how close they are to the tapestry so that it doesn't damage or weak.
And there was always a security
there was
guard
always
or man or woman in the room. So even on very intimate scenes, they were
there was someone in the corner looking at the candles and how they.
But there was always a guy standing in the corner no matter what. But also you couldn't eat or drink anything inside, and so you'd be shooting inside all day, and you'd have to go down these crazy staircases and walk way out onto the property to have some crackers and then go back in, which was a little tough. Yeah. Although I guess better with a corset.
It's hungry work.
Yeah.
You can't sit on chairs. There are places they can't sit there because not everything has a red rope on it.
They put pine cones on the chairs so that we wouldn't sit on them.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Because the sitting on a pine cone thing. It's like nobody wants
the
to
old
sit
English,
on a pine cone.
yeah, the old English.
It's an English tradition. And Emma, I'm really curious about your performance because I think obviously we have an audience full of actors, and I think it's very clear to understand how you're practicing and figuring out the performance with lines, but so much of your character is internal with what we're seeing on screen. So how do you personally prepare for those scenes?
Oh, that's my favorite thing. Yeah, if I could not speak at all, that would be my dream. Truly, like that's my favorite thing to get to do, is just to sort of think loudly, you know? I don't know. That's not really preparation. I guess that's just feeling it in the moment. So that for me is, yeah, that's my favorite. How do
And
I
for you,
explain
Rachel.
that? I guess I just started. That was all I could do.
Thinking loudly is a beautiful, I'm stealing that, it's beautiful.
And I was curious about some of the appeal of the character of Lady Sarah for you, Rachel, just because I think she's such an incredibly powerful woman for that time in history. She's not afraid to use her physicality, her mentality, and also her sexuality. Was that part of the appeal of the character to you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, although, you know, I guess Queen Elizabeth I, we just mentioned, had come before. But yeah, what was wonderful about the character, and I think all the characters, and Yorgos, I think, touched on this, is that they're not one thing, as he said, not someone that you could understand at a glance. So Lady Sarah's, you know, aggressive and cruel and imperious and sadistic and manipulative, but she's also, you know, vulnerable and passionate and needs Anne, and she's many things. She's a real person. She's not just a kind of idea of a historical character. She's complex and textured, like all women and all men are. We're not just one thing. I think often in the service of stories, sadly these days, particularly women, can just be put in a box of just maybe one or maybe two, if you're lucky, two things. But these three characters are all, I feel like they're infinite things, and they keep, as the story progresses, you think that they're one thing, and then they become, I mean, you know, I completely underestimate Abigail. I think she's an ingenue, and my God, how wrong could I have been? She's very powerful and sophisticated, and yeah, so that was a very long answer.
No, that was perfect. I also think it's really interesting the fact that what we actually know about this time in history is primarily from Lady Sarah publishing a book and including some of the letters between them. So does it feel to some degree like the film is a little bit through her perspective just because that's what we know, or did you just throw that out the window completely?
Yeah, because we, as I said in the beginning, there were a lot of facts from various sources, and a lot of it is owed to the original screenwriter Deborah Davis, who had written the original screenplay, and she knew everything about the period and the people and whatever was available to her. She knew it. But then what I wanted to do is, you know, take that knowledge and create this story that would be complete in a different way, and that I was very sure from the start that I was going to take liberties with it, and in order to create these characters more complete and complex and complicated, and so although we did keep a lot of what we know about those people and what happened, a lot of it is also invented or imagined. So and from the beginning, when we started working on the script with Tony, we knew that we wanted to create these three women as equals, and in different parts of the film, they kind of take lead in a way, each different character. So for me, there wasn't really one perspective. It was these three characters' perspective in different points of the film.
And did you view Queen Anne as someone who wasn't really capable of ruling, or that had that capability but was just so under the control of others?
I think both. I think there's a lot that we can't answer either. You know, like that, for instance. I think all three characters, all three women, they have all these aspects in their personalities. yes, it was, she went through a lot, and she appears not very capable, but who knows exactly how much that is something that she kind of feels comfortable in, and she's not daring to, to go outside of it, and how capable she actually is. And you see at some point when she needs to turn things around, she does it. So it's, there are, and you can say, you can discuss Abigail as well. Does she have a plan in mind from the beginning, or she doesn't? I mean, I don't know. We just wanted to create these characters in a way that, ourselves in the end, we would fight about it and have discussions about it. Who's the evil one? Who's the nice one? Who's right and who's wrong? And who deserves what? It's not clear, as it never is in real life.
Yeah, which I think goes back to what Rachel was saying about the complexity of these characters. You also cast some non-actors and did some street casting. How do you kind of just walk down the street and figure out who you think can give you that performance on screen? And then how is that for you as actors with a lot more experience working in a scene against someone who's doing this for the first time?
For me, it's like Meg, is it Meg? Mrs. Meg,
Jennifer.
who beats
Real name.
Abigail, Jennifer. Sorry, yeah. That I feel like if I could, it's unrecreatable how brilliant she is. That's how I felt. It's brilliant because she doesn't know how to act. She's never acted, so it's just absolutely mesmerizing because it's so pure and there's no technique. I mean, if only I'm jealous.
He was really pissed off because he had to do more than one take.
She was.
She was so confused.
Really
she was
grumpy.
Like, why are we doing this again? I need to go home. Yeah. Why is it so early? Why did we show up so early?
Yeah. She was so unimpressed by everything. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Do you think she'll do it again?
I know.
She could. One.
No, I don't think so.
Emma can do an impression of
No, I'm
Mrs.
not
Meg.
going to do an impression of her, but there was one day where she called Yorgos Argos, and had never seen his films and like did not care. And then she one day was like, "Have you seen The Lobster?" And everybody was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "He's a sinful man." He's sinful. He's a sinful man.
Also, I have to add
Like,
that
this is going to probably be worse than that.
in England, Argos is as you will know, is a shop where you buy
Cheap stuff.
cheap fridges and microwaves.
Anything under a $5.
Argos, yeah, it's like
She was
store.
the absolute best. She
It's
was
like
the
a
sweetest
slightly upper
ever.
market 99-cent store.
Yeah, and the best was that she got really, really emotional at the end. It was like, she's like, "Oh, God, it's so annoying. These days are long." And then she was amazing as an actor. And then at the end, she got really emotional and was really sad that it was over, just like we all were. And it was just like, it was wonderful. She was amazing.
How about the use of animals as well? That must have been a nightmare for continuity. You can kind of see the rabbits going off into the corners on screen as well. And then was that enjoyable for you to get to hang out with them all
weirdly
day?
enough, it wasn't. I'd expect it to be, and I was pleasantly surprised. They kind of, jumped around in the right places all the time. I mean, you couldn't really. There were some of them were so similar, you couldn't tell which one was which. So I think it worked great.
That's so true. Continuity doesn't matter when they all look the same, right? It's like, is that Peter or Paul?
Who's
Well,
that? Is that the black one? This one? No, that one. Well, it's just let them, jump around.
Was it also liberating to be doing a period piece where you get to use a lot of foul language within it as well? And I wanted to ask about the slapping. I feel like everyone gets slapped in this film, and you must have so much trust with each other as actors and performers when you're going into those scenes as well.
I mean, you learn. I had worked on stage before where every performance I had to be slapped, and you sort of learn to get slapped. I mean, you learn where to connect and how to move with it, and backhanding's a different story, but actual just slap, just this is, you kind of can get adjusted to it. It's just like you ride with it a little bit. So that didn't freak me out too much.
I was curious because sometimes people really go in for the slap and like to do it real, but obviously this one was a
No, I mean,
a
it
stage
is
slap.
real.
Yeah.
That is a real slap. I mean, that's you're
can
riding
just
with a
take it.
real slap. Yeah, but if someone goes too hard, then they're just being horrible. you know, and then it's like not okay. There is a midpoint there, I think. There has to be a discussion. You can't just slap someone.
I think for me growing up in England, which neither of you did, Olivia did, the Queen did, Olivia did, but it's that we're brought up, I don't know how many other Brits are here, but we're brought up on a diet of period English costume dramas on the BBC, wonderful things, but they're very, they're a certain kind of way, they're polite and people talk in a certain sort of way, and it's and it was just very refreshing to be to get to be violent and have guns and slap. It was just so different from from the idea of costume drama that I grew up on, for sure.
Yeah, there's some great visual displays of opulence as well, with like the tomato throwing, the references to pineapple. Where did you come up with those concepts from, Yorgos?
I don't know. I mean, we were looking for games for the court to play, like the duck race and throwing blood oranges, not tomatoes. That doesn't. If you didn't notice, no, it's not important. Just soft round things, reddish. Yeah, it was just about, you know, create this world where especially the men were kind of playing games all the time and they weren't as seriously involved in the world, in juxtaposition with the women running it. So I think it just stemmed from that.
I love it. And you shot the film on 35 millimeters. Do you still feel like there's a huge sanctity to shooting on film versus digital as a director?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I've made a couple of films in digital that I didn't enjoy at all the experience. Yeah, so you know, so long as there are still labs and film stock, I think we should keep shooting on film, because it's not just it's not just the final result, which I much prefer. It's also the process when you're actually filming, and there's a different atmosphere on a set when you're shooting on film. It's not like, oh, the camera's rolling and whatever, and we're gonna, you know, everybody's more focused, understands the preciousness of a take. There's a physicality to the material, and I think all that translates in the final result as well. The process that you've gone through in order to make it that way. And you know, and the end result, I don't think it's, you know, you see digital and you go like, oh, it looks okay, I saw this film, it looked fine. But then you see a film shot on film and you go, oh, that's what it looks like. Because we kind of forget, you know, what it looked like. And with prints, the same thing. I mean, we've kind of lost that battle. But when you actually go and see an actual print in the cinema, it's like a different world. And we're kind of forgetting that, and it's being lost, and it's a shame. And I hope at least we can keep shooting films on film and occasionally see them on a print.
You know it when you walk into the cinema and you see that flicker. So I have a couple of questions from our audience here. I wanted to start with one from Jason. That is, what is something in your creative process that you at one time felt like you had to do or was a must that you now never do, and how did you come to this realization? And that's a question to any and all of you. Like maybe there was a way that you used to prep that you maybe don't
really
need to
good
now as a
question.
tool. It's a hard question.
Yeah.
I think when I started out, I thought I tried to stay in character, whatever that would mean, or stay focused on the scene after the director said cut. And I never do that now. So for me now, it's like really important, cut, and then just it's gone, and just think about anything else but the fiction. So I think that's something that changed for me.
Either of you, we can come back to it.
I feel like I still do all the same stuff.
Well, what are some of the tools that you still find the most useful that you started out with? On
I
your
lay
first
my
job?
clothes out the night before, and then I always have a set bag, and I set my coffee maker to make it at a certain time that I have to wake up, and then I can sleep as late as possible and not be super fretful in the morning, which for me would screw up the rest of my day. So I micromanage my way through a shoot a little bit. It just helps me to be like over prepared in my life and punctual, so that I feel like I can be looser once I'm there. But professionalism and punctuality and having all my ducks in a row is very, very important to me. And that just helps me feel more free, I guess, on set.
And then this one is from Dawn, which is, what was the greatest challenge of playing a character from the early 18th century, and how did you tackle this?
Me?
For any of you.
Oh, sorry.
Question for the actors.
For me, it sort of goes back to the what I said about growing up on British costume dramas. It was kind of that as soon as we did that 3-week rehearsal playing those games, I knew this was something very different, and we were in Yorgos's tone and world, and so it was just not doing the kind of the sort of a received idea about how people behave and speak in a period costume drama, which wasn't what we were doing something different. Yeah, I remember one piece of direction, very rare, like something Yorgos said. It was brilliant. I knew exactly what he meant. I think I got into Arch, which was probably easy to do as Lady Sarah, and he said you sound like an X-Men baddie, and I was like, oh God, that's just so wrong. Yeah, I shouldn't. Yeah, so that was yeah. I'm sure that makes sense to all the actors.
Still not a direction.
What?
Still not a direction.
You're right. Not a
Comment.
direction. A comment. Yeah.
And have you had any surprising reactions or responses or interpretations from audience members now that you've gone through the festival circuit and you're getting close to the release of the film that are different from what you expected? Or has it all been pretty much as you expected?
The weirdest thing that I heard was we went to Telluride to the film festival, and someone had just seen The Favorite and was like, I loved it. I think it should win the Oscar for most popular film. And I was like, what? I was like, I guess if it was popular in that way, that would be cool. But that sounded totally weird to me.
Yeah, I think that idea is not on anymore.
No, it
Oh,
died
it's not
very
happening.
quickly.
Well, at the time it was. And I was like, that is not what I ever expected to hear about this movie. But that's fine.
I suppose the thing we've been getting a lot, speaking to journalists recently, is that, you know, how surprising it is that there's a film where there are 3 women who are complicated and layered and textured and powerful and not likable. We had this big conversation earlier about that. And I suppose that conversation has to be, it's so sad that that is the case. But it has surprised me a little bit. But I guess if you think about films in the last decade, there's very few that have not 1 but 2 but 3 very, very complex female roles. But it's surprising how much people have wanted to talk to us about that, don't you think?
There is an interesting element where people keep asking if it's timely because of everything
politics.
going on. Is it timely that there's this film starring 3 women in these complex roles? And it's like, was All About Eve timely, or was Faye Dunaway's character in Network timely? I mean, yes, I guess so, but people want to see great female roles, I think. It's half the population. Like, you just want to see great female roles on screen. I think it's always been timely. No matter what's been going on in culture, it's timely.
Yeah, I think people just like to look for meaning in whatever time it is with the content that we're watching, which
Right,
is great.
which makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, but I hope that it's always timely.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for today. Please check out the film. It comes out November 23rd. Tell your friends, tell your family. Please tell everyone to go see this amazing film. Thank you.